He rode into the valley like a man returning to his own grave. Dust curled behind his horse, and every hoofbeat echoed the same truth he'd carried for years. He was alive only because vengeance refused to kill him. Ezekiel Ward had lost everything. His ranch burned, his father shot dead on the porch, and his younger brother taken away screaming. He had tracked the man responsible across 3 states, through winter storms and desert heat, until his own bones felt as splintered as his memories. Revenge kept him breathing. Nothing else, but the winter had been unforgiving. His hands, once steady as a gunslinger's oath, were now swollen, bruised, and cracked open from frost and fights. When he finally collapsed along the creekside outside Willow Bend, he expected that to be the end. He welcomed it. He wanted the darkness to swallow him before the rage did. Instead, he heard footsteps. He forced one eye open and saw a woman kneeling beside him. Her hair was tied loosely, her face soft yet marked with its own sorrow. She touched his broken hands gently, as though afraid he might shatter further. "You're hurt," she whispered. He tried to pull his hands away, but he no longer had the strength. "Leave me," he rasped. "Ain't worth your time." She ignored him completely, like she had already decided who he was beyond the dirt and the anger. "You'll die out here. That's the idea," he muttered. But she wouldn't let go. She wrapped his hands carefully in cloth torn from her own dress clean, soft, smelling faintly of lavender, and for the first time in years, Ezekiel felt a warmth that wasn't born from hate or gunfire. He wanted to speak, to warn her that helping men like him only led to grief, but his voice broke before the words could leave. "My name is Clara," she said softly. "I'll take you home." He faded into unconsciousness before he could object. When he woke, the world smelled of soup, old wood, and snow. He was lying in a small cabin, fire crackling nearby, his hands wrapped in fresh bandages. Clara sat at the table, mending a coat with quiet concentration. He tried to sit up, groaning from pain, and she rushed over. "Easy," she said, steadying him. "Your hands were almost ruined. You can't keep pushing them like that." Ezekiel swallowed hard. "Why'd you help me?" Her eyes drifted to the window, to the snow falling beyond it. "Because once," she said, "someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. He didn't ask more. He didn't want to know. Kindness made him uneasy. It cracked the armor he had welded around his heart." Over the next 2 days, Clara cared for him with patience he didn't understand. She warmed water for his hands, fed him when he couldn't lift a spoon, and sat with him through the long, silent hours when the pain pulsed like a second heartbeat. But she never asked who he was, never asked where he came from, never asked what sins lay behind his eyes. On the 3rd night, as wind howled outside and the fire dimmed, he finally spoke. "I'm looking for a man named Jed Carter," he said quietly. "He killed my family." Clara's stitching stopped midair, but she didn't look surprised, only sad. "And when you find him?" she asked. Ezekiel looked down at his wrapped hands, at the way the bandages glowed soft in the firelight, like a mercy he hadn't earned. "I'll put him in the ground." Clara nodded slowly, as if she had expected nothing less. "Then you won't stay long." "No," she hesitated. "You could. Revenge doesn't always." "It's all I have," he cut in. She didn't argue. Instead, she brushed the edge of his bandage gently, and he felt something stir in him, something dangerous, something tender. Days passed. His strength returned. His hands, though stiff and painful, began to work again. Clara taught him how to stretch the fingers, how to ease the swelling, how to keep from reopening the wounds. Every touch from her was warm, steady, and unbearably gentle. One evening, as they sat outside watching the snow melt under the first touch of spring sun, she finally asked him the question she had been holding back. "What will you do when revenge doesn't fix the ache in your chest?" He didn't answer. Couldn't, because for the first time he feared she might be right. But the past caught up faster than he expected. 3 riders arrived in town that same week, men with rough voices and cruel eyes. They asked about a stranger with bandaged hands. They asked about Ezekiel. And when they realized someone had helped him, they came for Clara. He saw them through the window before they reached her door. His blood turned to fire. Ezekiel grabbed his gun, wrapping his damaged hands around the metal with agony, but he didn't care. He kicked open the door and stepped out into the snow. "Looking for me?" he growled. The men turned. Recognition flashed. Guns rose, but Ezekiel moved with the desperation of a man who finally had something to lose. The fight was fast, brutal, messy. His hands screamed with every pull of the trigger, every swing of his fist, every recoil of the gun. He didn't fight for revenge now. He fought for Clara. When the last man fell into the snow, gasping, Ezekiel staggered forward, blood dripping from his palms where the broken skin had split open again. Clara ran to him, catching him before he fell. "Your hands," she cried. He looked at her, breath shaking. "Don't care about my hands." She tore open the bandages, tears filling her eyes as she saw the raw wounds beneath. "Why would you do this to yourself?" He touched her cheek with trembling fingers. "Because you're the first good thing I've seen in years. I ain't losing you." Her tears fell onto his hands, warm as summer rain. And something inside him finally broke, not in pain, but in surrender. She held his shattered hands in both of hers, pressing her forehead against his. "Stay," she whispered. "Not because you're running from revenge, but because you're running towards something better." Ezekiel had chased death for years, but in that moment, he realized he wanted life, a life with her. He never found Jed Carter. Maybe he never would. Maybe revenge wasn't the path he was meant to finish. Maybe fate had dragged him across deserts and storms not to kill a man, but to meet a woman who could quiet the rage inside him. Ezekiel stayed. He healed slowly, painfully, stubbornly. Clara tended to him with a devotion that warmed every corner of the cold cabin. And as the seasons changed, as the snow melted and the valley bloomed with wildflowers, Ezekiel found something he had never expected: peace. Not because he had forgotten his past, but because someone held his broken hands and showed him they were still worth healing.